there, you're watching All 24 News World News program broadcasting to you live from Algiers. To the headlines. The Zionist entity severs electricity supplies to Gaza, drawing global condemnation. Meanwhile, Hamas signals readiness for the next phase of the ceasefire as tensions flare across the occupied territories. Unmasking atrocities. French soldiers confess to gas massacres in Algeria, and the colonial past resurfaces in full glare. Also coming up in our news, with a new UN briefing slated for April, the Polisario Front reasserts its right to self-determination while urging the US to take a definitive stance. And American and Ukrainian delegations meet in Riyadh in pursuit of peace. Washington welcomes dialogue, but Moscow presses Kiev to clarify its position on ending the war. This and more shortly. Welcome back to the details. First off, in our news, at least 4 Palestinians have been killed and 16 others wounded after Zionist air raid pounded Al Burij camp in central Gaza. According to Al Quds News Network, drones targeted a group near Wadi Abu Qatroun. 3 of the victims were brothers. The Palestinian Health Ministry says 5 more bodies were pulled from the rubble in the past 24 hours. Since October 7, 2023, the relentless offensive has claimed over 48,000 lives and left more than 111,000 injured, with untold numbers still buried beneath the debris. Still, the Zionist occupation has cut off electricity to the besieged Strip just a week after halting humanitarian aid, fuel, and vital medical supplies. The Gaza Electricity Distribution Company confirms that 10 main power lines initially disabled at the outset of the assault have now been severed once again. Desalination plants, lifelines for drinking or clean drinking water, are powered by electricity. Without it, health risks soar and the environmental toll escalates. Not a single truck of humanitarian aid has made it through. No food, no water, no relief, deepening hunger and thirst as thousands of Palestinian families fight to survive during the sacred month of Ramadan. More details with Salma Nasib.
In the narrow alleys of the Khan Yunis displaced people camp, amid rows of makeshift tents, the air carries a bittersweet scent, the smell of baked bread prepared by those who have little yet still share what they have. Ghada Araqab, a 40-year-old Palestinian mother of 6, is one of the few in the camp with a clay oven. Her modest setup, a makeshift oven she rents out for a symbolic price, has become a lifeline for neighboring families struggling to cook even the simplest of meals.
What kind of life are we living? No electricity, no water, no life at all. Our children are gone. Our youth is gone. Our sisters are gone. My brother is gone. There is nothing. No food, no water, no toilets, nothing.
Since the end of the first phase of the ceasefire on March 1st, the Zionist occupation has tightened its grip, enforcing a total blockade on goods entering the besieged enclave. With border crossings sealed, Gaza's 2.3 million residents face even deeper hardship, and during the holy month of Ramadan, it's a struggle just to find food, gas or fuel to cook.
The border crossings are closed. There's no gas. Everyone has to cook in clay ovens now. Why don't they open the border crossings?
On top of it all, Ghada, like many others, suffers from serious health problems but has no access to proper treatment, a result of Gaza's crippled healthcare system decimated by 15 months of genocide and bombardment.
I have a chest allergy. I feel tired all the time. There's dust in my chest. and my allergies are getting worse. But how can I afford treatment? No one is helping us.
As the people of Gaza wait in uncertainty for the second phase of the ceasefire agreement and hope for a permanent end to the bloodshed, they continue to endure the daily consequences of the Zionist genocide, a catastrophe that has shattered lives, destroyed homes, and reduced an entire population to a fight for survival.
The Islamic resistance movement Hamas has fiercely condemned the Zionist occupation's decision to sever electricity supplies after already choking out food, water, and medicine. Senior Hamas official Izzat al-Rishq denounced the move as a desperate act of blackmail, accusing the occupation of trying to break the will of the Palestinian people and their resistance through inhumane pressure tactics.
We strongly condemn the decision of the Zionist occupation to cut off electricity to Gaza after already depriving it of food, medicine and water, in a desperate attempt to pressure our people and their resistance through a cheap and unacceptable blackmail policy. Cutting off electricity, closing crossings, halting aid, relief and fuel, and starving our people constitute collective punishment and a full-fledged war crime. The occupation's practices represent a blatant violation of signed agreements and disregard for all humanitarian laws and norms, reaffirming once again that the occupation does not respect its commitments.
In a similar reaction, the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in the occupied Palestinian territories, Francesca Albanese, has sounded the alarm, declaring that the Zionist occupation's decision to cut off electricity in Gaza is a clear marker of genocide in motion. In a statement on X, Albanese stressed that the absence of sanctions or an arms embargo is effectively giving the occupation a free hand to commit atrocities. She warned that one of history's most systematic and preventable genocidal crimes is unfolding in real time, and the world still has a chance to stop it. Ireland's Foreign Minister Simon Harris has warned that the blockade of humanitarian aid and the power cut to Gaza will only amplify an already spiraling crisis. In a post on X platform, he denounced the Zionist occupation's policy as collective punishment, calling it both unacceptable and unconscionable. Meanwhile, the British Foreign Office echoed the alarm, stating unequivocally that humanitarian assistance must never be contingent on a ceasefire, nor weaponized as a bargaining chip. In its official statement, it asserted that cutting off aid and electricity blatantly violates international law. The Islamic resistance movement Hamas has reaffirmed its commitment to the ceasefire and declared its readiness to move into the second phase of negotiations without delay. The group emphasized that the agreement brokered through international mediation obliges the occupation to comply, as it remains the sole pathway to securing the release of prisoners. Hamas firmly rejected what it called threats and political blackmail, warning that any deviation from negotiations could jeopardize the fate of the occupation's own captives.
The occupation continues to renege on the agreement and refuses to begin the second phase, exposing its intentions of evasion and procrastination. The agreement was brokered by mediators and witnessed by the world, which necessitates compelling the occupation to implement it, as it is the only path to recovering the captives. The language of blackmail and threats of war will be futile. There is no alternative to negotiations and commitment to the agreement. Anything else is mere manipulation of the captives' fate.
The Palestinian Prisoners Club and the Prisoners Affairs Authority report that at least 62 detainees had died or have died in Zionist occupation prisons since the war began, including 40 from Gaza alone. In a joint statement, they stressed that these figures reflect only the deaths officially acknowledged by the occupation and exclude countless others who were tortured, disappeared, or executed in silence. The groups also revealed that the occupation is still withholding the bodies of 60 prisoners who died after October 7th, deepening the anguish of families left without answers or closure. Hezbollah Secretary General Naim has issued a warning vowing that the group may reignite confrontation if the Zionist occupation persists in violating the ceasefire and encroaching on Lebanese territory. In an interview with Al-Manar, Qasem reaffirmed Lebanon's commitment to the truce, but stressed that the occupation's continued provocations are testing the limits of restraint. He declared that the land cannot be liberated by diplomacy alone, signaling that Hezbollah stands ready to act if pushed further. A powerful new documentary by French filmmaker Claire Pierre titled Algeria's Special Weapons Unit aired Sunday on Swiss television, shedding fresh light on France's brutal colonial legacy. The film features first-hand testimonies from survivors of the massacres committed during Algeria's liberation struggle, exposing France's use of chemical weapons and toxic gases to target civilians, many of whom were hiding in caves to escape military raids. Yasin Erkti has more.
A chilling documentary has reopened one of the darkest chapters of France's colonial history in Algeria, titled Algeria's Special Weapons Units. The film by French director Claire Pierre aired Sunday on Swiss television, revealing harrowing testimonies and declassified evidence of chemical extermination by French colonial forces during Algeria's War of Independence. Through eyewitness accounts and official documents, the film exposes the use of chemical weapons and toxic gases against Algerian civilians, especially those hiding in remote caves during the liberation struggle. One of the most haunting episodes in the Garbani Chatouh massacre in Batna province, a horrific event still etched in the memories of survivors. With a trembling voice, Akun Amar, who witnessed the atrocity at age 15 only, recalls the horrors he endured.
It was 1959. I was 15 when the planes attacked. We fled to the cave with other residents, but the French forces found us. They brought in poisonous gas by helicopter. Thick black smoke filled the cave. We inhaled it and started coughing. Green foam came out of our mouths. One by one, we collapsed.
Another survivor, Mohammed Ben Suleiman al-Abbasi, lost loved ones in the attack, memories still vivid in his mind after all these years.
My uncle died in front of me. My father taught him the Shahada in his final moments. He had asthma and didn't survive. The next day I returned with my mother and found the bodies lined up in trenches, 6 or 7 at a time. They had turned blue, swollen beyond recognition. You could only identify them by their clothes.
The documentary also features rare interviews with former French soldiers, shedding light on the psychological toll of those operations, even on those who carried them out.
I still remember the smell of gas, the smell of death. I spent 27 months there. One day I entered a cave and got shot. As I tried to retreat, my gas mask tore. I breathed in the fumes and fainted. I woke up in a hospital in Tizi Ouzou and stayed there for a month to recover.
Decades after independence, the scars of France's brutal colonial campaign are still deeply embedded in Algeria's collective memory. But films like Algeria's Special Weapons Units not only document history, they serve as a solemn tribute to the martyrs, the resilience of survivors, and the enduring spirit of a nation that fought for its freedom.
Similarly, the documentary also features former French Defense Minister Alain Richard, who acknowledged that the use of chemical weapons and toxic gases against Algerians during their struggle for independence was unjustified and unnecessary.
I don't see any situation in the past 50 years that would have prompted France to use chemical weapons. I believe every country struggles to come to terms with the actions it took in the past, and we are no exception.
In a sharply worded piece, Le Monde has warned that deepening contradictions within the French government could backfire, especially in debates surrounding the 1968 bilateral agreement with Algeria, while right-wing and far-right voices frame the deal as a generous gesture. The paper underscores that the agreement was in fact crafted by Paris to curtail Algerian labor migration, not to facilitate it. Though it initially granted limited exemption from broader immigration laws, a series of restrictive amendments over the years have chipped away at those already modest benefits. Moving on to a different matter now, Algeria and the African Union Commission have reaffirmed their shared commitment to advancing continental priorities from security and political stability to sustainable development. On Monday, Algerian Minister of State and Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf hosted Deputy Chairperson Monique Nsanzabaganwa at the ministry's headquarters as she paid a farewell visit ahead of the end of her term. The Algerian Foreign Ministry held her contributions, with Minister Attaf personally praising her steadfast efforts to alleviate or elevate the African agenda on the global stage. Algeria has announced a strategic partnership with the US-based CBAT Global to modernize its pilot training programs, making a bold step toward digital transformation in the aviation sector. The national carrier says the collaboration with this industry leader in remote aviation training will not only enhance pilots' operational readiness, but also raise safety and efficiency benchmarks across the board.
Air Algérie will benefit from a modern training program based on simulation and distance learning tools. This partnership falls within the framework of Air Algérie's modernization strategy and embodies its commitment to adopting best practices in the field of aviation. By investing in advanced technological solutions, the company strives to achieve excellence and ensure the continuous development of its operations.
The UN Security Council is set to hold closed-door consultations on the MONUSCO mission by mid-April as efforts to revive the stalled peace process gain traction. Polisario Front representative Sidi Mohamed Ammar told the Algerian news agency that council members will receive briefings from UN envoy Stéphane de Mistura on political developments and MONUSCO chief Alexander Ivanko on the situation on the ground. De Mistura has already launched preliminary consultations meeting with Slovenia's Secretary of State, a current Security Council member, and it is expected to deepen engagement with both the Polisario Front and the Moroccan occupation authorities before submitting his formal report. The Sahrawi diplomat described the upcoming session as a timely opportunity for the U.S. administration to articulate a clear and principled position on the Sahrawi question and the UN-led referendum mission.
The upcoming Security Council consultations will be the first opportunity for the new U.S. administration to express its position on all issues related to the UN peace mission in Western Sahara.
Shifting focus to other news story, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky arrived in Saudi Arabia on Monday as international efforts intensified to chart a path toward ending the war in Ukraine. According to Ukrainian media, high-stakes discussions scheduled for Tuesday will center on both strategic mineral agreement and broader conflict resolution efforts. While Zelensky will not personally attend the talks, Kiev's delegation, led by his chief of staff, will include the foreign and defense ministers, along with a senior military official. In a related story, the Kremlin has underscored the need for Ukraine to clarify its position on peace talks with Russia. Speaking on Monday, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said Moscow will closely monitor the outcome of the US-Ukrainian talks in Saudi Arabia, adding that Russia wants to see whether Kiev is truly seeking peace.
It's not important what we expect. It's important what the United States expects. We have already heard the statements at various levels that the United States is waiting for the Ukrainians to demonstrate that they are willing to make peace. It is, in fact, probably what everyone is waiting for. If the members of the Kiev regime really want peace, or if they don't, of course it's very important, and it needs to be determined.
On a similar note, US President Donald Trump has declared that Washington will push Kiev to take peace negotiations more seriously, arguing that Ukraine holds far less leverage than Moscow on the battlefield. In a media interview, Trump said that the time has come to strike a deal and bring the fighting to a halt, vowing to end the war once and for all. He also revealed that the freeze on US intelligence sharing with Ukraine will soon be lifted, a move seen by analysts as a strategic recalibration ahead of potential talks. China has sharply criticized new U.S. tariffs on Chinese-linked vessels, warning that the move could drive up global shipping costs and rattle already fragile supply chains. Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao Ning called on Washington to honor international trade norms and abandon what she described as improper practices. She warned that Beijing will not sit idle, vowing that China will take all necessary steps to safeguard its legitimate rights and interests.
Imposing tariffs on cargo handling equipment will increase global shipping costs, disrupt supply chains, and raise inflation in the U.S., harming American consumers and businesses. This will not revive the U.S. shipbuilding industry. We urge the U.S. to respect multilateral rules and stop its wrongful practices. China will protect its legitimate rights and interests.
For a roundup of more international headlines making waves, here's our Virginia.
The Russian army claims advances in Ukraine's Kursk region, raising its flag over several towns. Kiev denies the claims, stating Russia failed to retake Soja. Meanwhile, Ukraine launched drone strikes on Russia's Samara region, causing a warehouse fire but no casualties. North Korea fired multiple ballistic missiles off its western coast as U.S.-South Korea joint drill began. South Korea boosted surveillance while Pyongyang warned the exercises would escalate tensions. Iran rejects negotiations with the U.S. if aimed at dismantling its nuclear program, but is open to talk on addressing military concerns. Tehran denies receiving any message from Trump and accuses Washington of violating international law through sanctions. Sudan's Deputy Sovereign Council leader Malik Agar says talks with RSF are possible if they honor the Jeddah Agreement. He urged African nations to take a greater role in resolving the crisis and called for Sudan's reinstatement in the African Union.
And finally, in Port Sudan, a local charity is offering iftar meals throughout Ramadan, extending a lifeline to families torn by the war. The ongoing conflict has plunged the region into a deepening humanitarian crisis, displacing thousands and exacerbating hunger and hardship. More on this story with Sofian Kanturi now.
In a city torn apart by conflict and gripped by a deepening economic crisis, Port Sudan stands as a place where hope endures, even in the harshest conditions. As the holy month of Ramadan unfolds, charitable organizations face a bitter reality, yet remain determined to bring comfort to families exhausted by war and hardship. In the heart of this devastation, heavy pots simmering with food become silent witness to a collective spirit of solidarity.
برغم الوضع الاقتصادي الطاحن على السودان.
Despite the difficult economic situation in Sudan and the growing number of displaced people, this food reaches those who need it most. In hospitals and underserved shelters, we hope to live up to this great responsibility.
In a place where each day is a struggle to survive, volunteers set up driven by compassion, offering hot meals to the most vulnerable, restoring not only strength but dignity and hope.
Butchers, cooks, drivers, distributors, everyone does what they can. Some of us even pause on regular work during Ramadan to give our time to these charity efforts. We have 40 distribution points, mainly in hospitals across Red Sea State. We also deliver meals to police stations, checkpoints, prisons and student housing in the Mayo district.
Since the conflict erupted in April 2023, Port Sudan has found little relief. But in the face of scarcity and instability, these daily acts of kindness are powerful reminders that solidarity is stronger than suffering.
And that wraps up our news program for tonight. For more updates, you can always check our social media platforms. Thank you for tuning in. See you next time.